In 1990, a team of unknown Africans walked into Italy and did something nobody thought was possible. Cameroon beat the defending champions Argentina on opening night and kept going all the way to the quarterfinals. The world called it a miracle. That was 36 years ago. Since then, we've heard the same story on repeat. Every tournament, an African team flashes brilliance, then gets sent home early, talented, chaotic, not ready. But here's what nobody's telling you. While the world kept repeating that story, something changed. Quietly, structurally, permanently. The academies got better. Real money started flowing in. Players stopped leaving as raw teenagers and started leaving as the finished product. And right now, you're watching the last generation of African football anyone will ever call underdogs. Today, I'm showing you exactly why African football is on track to dominate the next decade of world football. Let's get into it. 2. For decades, the criticism followed a script. Incredible talent, no tactical structure. Amazing athletes, poor decisions under pressure, peak early, collapse in the knockouts. And historically, some of that wasn't wrong. Federations were underfunded, coaches got hired and fired every 6 months. Players were discovered late, thrown into European academies at 16 with zero tactical foundation. But look at the last few years. Senegal won the 2021 Africa Cup of Nations, then beat Qatar and Ecuador at the World Cup with a disciplined, organized setup that looked nothing like the chaotic African teams of the 2000s. Morocco reached the 2022 World Cup semifinal by keeping 5 clean sheets in a row against Belgium, Spain, and Portugal, 2 of the most technically gifted footballing nations on the planet, shut down by one of the most disciplined defensive systems in the entire tournament. That's not chaos, that's coaching. The old narrative was blinding people to what was building underneath it. Here's the part most fans never see, because it doesn't happen on camera. For 15 years, there's been a quiet academy boom across the continent. Senegal, Mali, Ivory Coast, Morocco, and increasingly, East Africa. Generation Foot in Senegal, the academy that produced Sadio Mane, partners directly with a European club, so players get European standard coaching while still developing inside African football culture instead of being uprooted at 15 into a foreign system with zero support. Morocco's federation built the Mohammed VI Football Academy specifically to stop the brain drain of talent developed entirely outside the national setup. You saw the result in Qatar. This is the part that changes everything. African football used to export raw talent. Now it's starting to export the finished product, players who already understand shape and positional discipline before they land in Europe. When the pipeline changes, the ceiling changes with it. Look at who's actually wearing African national team shirts right now. Victor Osimhen, one of the most feared strikers on the planet. Achraf Hakimi, arguably the best right back in the world, a Champions League winner. Mohamed Salah, one of the most productive attackers in Premier League history, still elite in his 30s. Ademola Lookman, an AFCON player of the tournament and Europa League final hat-trick hero, and that's before the next wave. Teenage prospects already drawing major European scouting attention. This isn't one golden generation, it's a conveyor belt. Multiple federations producing multiple elite, starting 11 level players simultaneously. When you have that much talent density, structure is the only thing separating good team from world beater. And the structure is finally catching up. Football follows money, and for the first time, real money is flowing into African football infrastructure, not just into buying players out of it. European clubs are opening scouting partnerships and satellite academies across the continent because it's cheaper and more effective to develop talent on the ground than gamble on raw imports. Morocco, Egypt, and South Africa have invested heavily in World Cup and AFCON standard stadiums and training facilities, infrastructure that keeps producing value for years after the final whistle. And it's not just money, it's who's coaching. For decades, federations hired well-known European coaches for a 2-year paycheck, got one decent tournament, then watched them leave with zero continuity for whoever came next. That's shifting. Walid Regragui didn't just get lucky with Morocco in 2022, He built defensive structure and squad culture over time, and it translated into results against 3 of Europe's most decorated footballing nations. You can't build a coherent system in 6 months with a coach who doesn't speak the same language as half the squad. You can build it over a 4-year cycle with continuity and trust. That's exactly what's starting to happen. I'm not going to pretend everything's solved. Federation politics remain a real issue. Sudden coaching changes and financial mismanagement still happen and can undo years of progress overnight. Domestic leagues still struggle to retain top talent because the pay gap with Europe is enormous. And no African nation has reached a World Cup final yet. Morocco's semi-final was historic, but it's still one result, one tournament. So this isn't guaranteed. But here's the difference between now and every other African football boom predicted since 1990. The academies, the coaching continuity, the investment, and the talent density have never all been this strong at the same time before. Here's my actual prediction. Remember this video in 5 years. By 2030, at least one African nation reaches a World Cup semifinal again, and it won't be treated as a shock. It'll be expected. By 2032, 3 or 4 African-born players finish inside the top 10 of Ballon d'Or voting in the same year. Not one breakout star, but several, because the pipeline is now that deep. And by 2036, I believe we see the first African nation reach a World Cup final, because by then today's Academy graduates will be entering their prime at 28, 29, 30. Coached by a generation of tactically sophisticated African coaches who came up through this exact system. The African underdog story told since 1990 is running out of road, not because the talent is new, it never was, but because for the first time, the infrastructure is catching up to it. And when that gap closes completely, it stops being an upset. It just becomes the new normal. So, that's my case. African football isn't the surprise package of world football anymore. It's building the foundation to be one of the sport's dominant forces for the next decade. Do you agree, or am I overselling this? Drop your prediction below. Which African nation makes the deepest run this time around? If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next videos. See you in the next one.